Two questions.
Questions? Well, the homework was composed of questions, the task was a response to the questions, so I figured that was the difficult part. So let's try to dig a little deeper, let's try to peel back. What was difficult about the questions?
I have to say that there was a lot of new terminology for me, new concepts for me, so, I needed time to process it.
Yes.
And I watched the video that they gave us, I must have watched it about 5 or 6 times.
Really?
For
Really?
both politics.
So you're adding hits to the videos, sometimes we upload videos on YouTube. If there's enough hits, they will get revenue from those commercials, those advertisements out there. So you add some revenue. That's good. That's good. But you said one key thing about the terminology, the concept of the terminology. When you start studying a new field, such as, and also like this in public administration, there's a lot of new terminology, there's a lot of new terms. There are technical terms. Sometimes there are very specific terms. There are terms for everything really in government, all right? Where in regular society, people would hear it and say, what does that mean? They just brush it off, but it has very specific meaning in different administrative agencies, circles, and so forth and so on, all right? And as we move along, we are developing our vocabulary, all right? Our public administration vocabulary, all right? So that's good. That's a challenge. That means you're thinking about it, right? So what else?
I wasn't sure if I had to generalize it or focus on the tweet.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that? Generalize and focus on tweet. Why? Where does the question come from? I mean, where does the question of should I focus on tweet or how do I generalize? What is that about?
That's the tricky part.
Yeah. You mean
If
Bill?
I should just generalize it on the whole as best practice or focus on the tweet as it was.
All right. That's a trick that you all have to try to work through because Boss Tweed is an example, right?
Yes.
He's the biggest example
Yes.
of a boss, right? How boss politics works. So he's written about a lot, right? So you can find a lot of examples. So the trick is, as scholars, as administrators, use this case, Boss Tweed is one case, and show how it can apply to a lot of different way other cities have been run, right? Now all cities and all bosses weren't the same people. They all had a little different style about them. But the underlying thing is that it was a machine, all right? So that's one of the things you're going to have to work on. Building your vocabulary, your strategies, all right? Using specific cases to highlight larger trends, all right? So what else is challenging? No more challenges? All right.
You know?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if you
Now you're ready.
Okay, well, the readings, because it is a new language, the readings for me are quite dense, so I have to go over them a second time. And I understand that the notes supplement the readings, but to answer those questions, I feel they are not just, you can't just answer them in 1 or 2 sentences. Because the readings really go into depth on issues like progressive reform movement, I really don't know how much to write and how much to acceptable for review. This is the first time I'm in class of this nature. So that's it. For example, question 1 and 2 is actions of boss politics, and question 1 and 3. And the problem with boss politics, I got that given one question.
One question,
Yeah.
one the same, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I'm just making sure you want to make course here.
Yeah. Now, that's a very good statement, a very good comment, and it's a very good question that everyone has in their mind. That's why it's good that we talk about this thing, right? Again, it's a process. Learning and education is a process, right? As we go through and I write comments on your paper, you see what I'm looking for, and I see what you're bringing to the table, how deep you're going into the readings, the lectures. And it's not just about repeating what's been said, but it's about telling me what the big picture is, right? Now, this is the thing. This is a professional program of administration. So when you get big tasks, big administrative tasks, you're going to start getting paid the big bucks so you can be able to synthesize and go through a lot of dense information and material, rules, regulations, social phenomenon, statistics, quantitative and qualitative data, case law, business theory, so forth and so on. And then you have to condense all that information and write a little report to your manager, your boss, who is always on the fly. All right? The chief executive officer is always on the fly. They're going from meeting to meeting, taking care of this issue, taking care of this issue. They want you to pull out the salient points, the salient issues, so they can follow your reasoning and be able to make a decision. All right? So that's really what this is. These exercises are about. It is a lot of information, dense information, but it takes practice. It's like any other exercise. The more you go through it, the better you get at it. All right? So that's a very good statement right there, because it gets to the heart of what these exercises are about. All right? Are there any other questions, comments?
Me was like trying to, when I was doing the assignment, I kept on wanting to like relate it to the mafia. Just like when I was studying criminal justice,
Yes.
you know, everything that we went over through the lecture, that's all I kept thinking about. I was like, wow, it was ran pretty much that same way, just without the guns and all the violence, you know, that's our glorified aspect.
Yeah.
When I was doing the assignment, it just kept on pulling me towards that, and I was trying to not write that.
Well, let me delve into this. Why did you try not to write about it? If it was
I don't know,
in your
I
mind,
don't feel like it was right to put that in those answers.
why is it not right?
I don't know, I just wanted to stay out of that part.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. Intelligence really is able to take concepts and relate them. You can use that type of example if you're able to build a strong case. So you need to dig deep into the elements, right? What is it? What are the similarities between a boss system and the mafia? Is it the organization? Is it the way that decisions are made? So forth and so on. You need to build a case. And when you write papers, in general, you need to build cases. All right? You need to show your reasoning. You need to show that this is why I saw this. This is why I made this decision, and this is this is the way that it is. Show proof. All right? And if you're able to do that, your papers are more interesting. All right? Think about it. When you flip it through the TV screen, right? A lot of it's nonsense, of course, right? But even out of all that nonsense that's on TV, there are thousands of other shows that were scripts at one point in time, right? When you watch a public speaker, some people are engaging, some people you're on your cell phone, some of you are in class now on your cell phones, right? Think about it. You have a speaker, if they're exciting, then you listen, right? If they're drawing, bland, and saying the same old stuff, then people kind of phase out. It's kind of unmemorable, all right? So what I want you to do is, that was a very good example, is learn the parameters of this field of public administration. Learn the rules, regulations, theories, and boundaries. But there's also an art to this. The art is taking these theories and concepts and applying it to whatever social situation you are here to address. Some of you are in healthcare, some of you want to be in criminal justice, some of you want to be in some type of public service, nonprofit, for-profit, whatever, right? But you take these theories and concepts and you apply it to whatever you're interested in. That's not, it's easier said than done, all right? But that's the hard part about this. Right? But if you can do that, then you can master the field, right? Because you're applying it to something that you're comfortable with.
So how do you know the difference when you're doing a summary or you're doing an objective analysis on a question that you ask and you're trying to base it on, is it your personal analysis of what you have read or public administration analysis? You know what I'm saying, and how you express that?
Okay. I'm going to tell you something. No piece of literature, no piece of writing, no study is objective. There's always a purpose. Why? The more complex the study, the more resources it takes. Money, manpower, so forth and so on. In administration, the more successful studies are made to look objective, truthful. Not, well, everybody says they tell the truth, but to me, objective, went through all the facts, right? But the very reason why you select an issue is because you have an interest in it. Because there's an infinite amount of issues, and you select an issue because there's some kind of interest, right? Either you're for it or against it, all right? A lot of successful writers, they try to mask their true intentions, but it's the way that they place the argument, the way that they build and structure the argument. All right? They lead the reader to see the world their way. All right? So back to your question, Andrea, how do you go through? Well, you have to sit back and say, what am I trying to say? Outline your argument and fill in the holes. All right? But at the same time, every sentence can't be, I believe this. The world has to be this way. My pastor says this. I say that because when you say that, those are key words, those are words in our vocabulary that will signal to the reader. You don't know who the reader is. That will signal to the reader, oh, this person is very biased toward the situation. They have an objective. They're writing this because they have an objective. All right. So you don't want to make it seem as though all of these theories and concepts are solely coming from you. What you want to do is make it seem as though, okay, this is what the literature says, so I'm going to present it, and then you build a case, all right? Even though the reason why you present it is because maybe you feel an affinity for it.
I'm having a difficult time. I think I'm trying to, like I see the business side of it, and then like having worked in the, in structures, I'm getting a better sense of what that was that I was working in,
Yeah, that's a very good statement. As you go through the program, you're going to reflect back upon your previous work experience, personal experience, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right? That's what you should be doing. That's learning. You're going to, as these key terms and concepts are brought to you, you're going to see the world a different way. You're going to see things that you did not see before. That's what education is about. That's what the process of education is about. Now, administration, these are serious concepts, theories, but they're all really man-made constructs on how we organize ourselves in the world. All right? They're invisible, yet we build tangible things because we believe in these visible structures. Now, we'll go into that deeper as we move along. But I think that's good. I like talking after the homeworks are submitted. So when you're sitting at your desk, you can say, I was not alone. All right? You know that other people were thinking. All right? Feel it. And that's what education is about. 50% of your learning is going to come from me. Another 50% is going to be when you walk out that door, you're like, oh man, what was that guy talking about? Oh, he just, I didn't deserve that grade. Oh, that test sucked, right?
Yeah.
And then you get the feedback. I know. I was there too. I was there too. I was there too. One of the philosophies, some philosophers, they say, a lot of classes are what students wish, or what the professor wishes that class was when they were a student. Thank you. I don't know. You'll get that later. You won't get it now, you get it later. All right. Today, we're going to go over the building blocks of what they call Orthodox administration. Orthodox just means old, classical. One of those big words, those terminology words. All right? Orthodox. In this sense, if you hear it, it refers back to a couple of primary theories that we're going to go over today. All right? And again, in public administration, in American administration, it is not neat, it's not clean cut. Things are pieced together and woven together. All right? But once you understand these concepts, they are basic constructs of how our public agencies, really, and private agencies, are built up today. All right? First thing, ready for reading. Hegel, German philosopher, 1800s. He said that the philosophy of our time, the philosophies of our time, are nothing more but the spirit of our times in abstract thoughts. That's abstract in itself. Well, does anybody know what this means or have any insight on what this means? The philosophies of our time are nothing but the abstract, or the spirit of our time in abstract thought. To a degree. Well, the essence of this is saying that the challenges, what's going on in society, shapes the philosophies that develop in our time. All right? And throughout history, history kind of repeats itself in a lot of ways, but it goes through phases. All right? Transition. All right? So what we're going to learn about when we talk about Orthodox administration is this is a philosophy of its time. All right? There's a purpose and a need for it. And what we've done over the last class period, and in this homework, we've built a good, knowledgeable foundation about what was going on during this time. All right? This Orthodox administration is a philosophy about how to address the challenges of today. All right? Woodrow Wilson, 28th president. Many will argue that he was a great president. Many will argue that maybe he wasn't so great. But, as anyone steps up in a leadership role, there are always detractors. There are always people who criticize. It's easy to criticize, right? It's hard to be the one to step up. Sometimes you have to let the work of an individual speak for itself, all right? Now, he was born in Virginia. Religious family. Father was a preacher and a professor. Staunton, Virginia, yes. Staunton, that little town. Where you had the city manager and the 28th president of the United States. That is a small town, but it's a very powerful town. Well, things that come out of the town, all right? That just let you know, no matter where you come from, you don't know where you're going to end up. All right? Just keep pushing, 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 and good things happen. All right? So you can come from a big city like New York, or you can come from a very small town like Staunton. All right? All right. Now, Ken from Staunton, his father was a preacher and a professor. All right? He grew up in the South. After the Civil War, the South was destroyed, right, by the North. So he knew the destruction that war could bring, and he was conscious of this. But he was also conscious of the challenges that this nation felt, challenges that this nation was going through, and he felt that responses to this challenge were within the capacity of this country to handle. All right? He went on to go to law school, became a lawyer in Atlanta, and he said he had a meager practice. Meager means, well, people weren't paying, you know. So what he did is he went back and got a PhD, became a professor, all right? Rose up through the ranks really fast, became president of Princeton. Wanted to change the whole campus, the dynamics of the campus around, and change everything. But, you know, he ran into the faculty, and things slowed down. He was there for 8 years. Then he became the governor of New Jersey. All right? So this was a very intelligent man, very intelligent. But during his years as a faculty member, he wrote, which is they classify as the founding document of American public administration. It's called Study of Administration. Very basic, very simple title. But at this time, it was radical in the American context. All right, we'll talk about that soon. So he was an idealist. He was a visionary. All right, visionary that was able to move up through the ranks really fast. All right, he was a very diligent, hard worker. Matter of fact, he worked so hard, lobbying, campaigning, that he made him tire himself out. Had a stroke. Traveling to Pueblo, Colorado. Or Pueblo, I think. Does anyone know where Pueblo is on the map? No? Okay, exactly. Right? If I say where's New York, Los Angeles, people will raise their hand. Right? Pueblo is south of Denver. Beautiful mountainous area. It was hard to travel back there. But he was part of this progressive reform movement that we talked about. All right? Anybody remember the progressive reform movement? Yeah? Okay. Some of the challenges that were going on. All right? Now, on one hand, the machine of New Jersey put him into power. Put him into office. When he got into office, he started to do things that were for the people. In a sense, he said that of all the elected officials in this nation, the president is the only one that could and should stand up on the people's behalf. President. And he took that to heart. So he started pushing for legislation in all types of areas. The Federal Reserve Act that dealt with the central banking system in the United States. Regulating banks. Right? Federal Trade Commission to curb unfair business practices. Clayton Antitrust Act strengthened the regulatory requirements on mergers, acquisitions, so forth and so on. I mean, who's this legislation aimed at? Big business, right? Big business, monopoly business. All your steel tycoons, your railroad magnates, so forth and so on. Right? These are the house of J.P. Morgan Chase, so forth. So these are household names today. Right? But he also started the Federal Farm Loan Act. Farmers, they could borrow up to 50% the land so that they can invest on the land, right? Buy machinery. Expanded the personal income tax. To the majority of people, all right? This brings more money into the pot, but it also makes everyone citizens, really. Not everyone citizens, but makes citizens contribute to the greater good of society. Right? The Keep Knowing Act, the banning of child labor. These are, today, these are looked at as, this is the way the world should be. All right? So we were all born into a society that had forward thinking. This was standing up for the little guy in society. He was also awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1919. He laid the foundation for the League of Nations, which was the predecessor of the UN. Does anyone know what happened? League of Nations? Got this legislation, wrote it up, went to Europe. Yeah, it got defeated, right? He brought it back home. The other party, they didn't like what he was doing, so they defeated him, right? They did everything they can, right, to defeat him. A couple decades later, another big war later, we got the UN. What's the current example? What's going on now? Government shutdown. All right? What's that about?
Parties not working together.
Separate them from
What's it about?
Federal.
Look, this is an ideological battle. What does Obamacare represent? The little people, right? It represents an expansion of government, right? Since the 1980s, remember, government was the problem. Government is the problem. So over the last 30 years, government has continually drew back on the provision of especially social services, right? Then we had this financial collapse. Then you have this stimulus funding going out, and then you have this expansion of public programs. The biggest program is this Healthcare Act. I mean, really, to people outside the United States, it seems kind of ridiculous for the wealthiest country in the world to not want to give people health insurance, right? If you can walk into the what is it called, urgent care emergency room, they have to see you. It may take a long time, but they have to see you. If they have to see you, somebody's paying. All right? But no, it's not just anyone's paying; it's the government's paying. Has anyone seen a medical bill, a real one?
Of course.
Not the one that sends you, but the
$1,300.
yeah. All right? Outrageous prices. Now, there have been studies done on if these are market prices or if these are inflated prices. And nobody really, well, people know that they're not market prices because they cost a lot more than the good cost. But the determination of the price is very different.
They are inflated, because when you see what they can bill for, and then you have the amount that the insurance company is gonna cover.
It's extremely inflated, but what I'm saying is nobody knows what the actual, let me rephrase that, what the real market rate would actually be. So if you buy a syringe, and the hospital buys a syringe, right, it costs them 50 cents. They may sell it, they may say we use this needle, it may say $10, $20, $30, $100, $200, $300, right? Because of the skill that it took to draw your blood. There's a lot of different things, right? We'll go over that in one of the other classes, but it's an ideological battle, right? Nobody really cares about the little people that, well, a lot of times people in power, they don't really care about the people who are being hurt by this battle that they've got going on, right? But it's an ideological battle. And I think Mr. Wilson found himself in that same struggle, right? But ultimately, United Nations was formed, and at some point, either you're going to be on the right side of history or the wrong side of history, right? And only time will tell. And that's the thing. A lot of times we get into these political battles with one another. American politics has always been extremely contentious, right? Time tells. Now, the study of administration. The first time you read this, it is very dense reading. It's so much that he's saying in these Some people think it's so few sentences. Some people think it's way too long. All right. So what I'm going to do is dissect 3 parts of this essay. All right. This was the first essay of public administration, of American public administration. So when people say, what was the founding document of American public administration? Well, Mr. Wilson, 1887. All right. Now I divided this into 3 sections. History of administration. Section 2 is about this separation of the administrative dichotomy, separation of politics and administration. And then section 3 is how the field can be developed in the United States. Now remember, this was a theory of the time. All right? Deal with the issues. Now, history section, he said, even though Europe was ruled by monarchs at this time, kings, queens, they had extensive and extremely sophisticated administrative apparatuses. Their governments were highly developed, very efficient. They were students, like we're sitting in this classroom studying public administration. There are universities in Europe where the people were doing it for at least 100 years prior to the writing of this, or for hundreds of years. All right, so this was developed science. All right, it's just new to the United States. So Wilson, the first thing, he said, look, there's a field of study out there that we need, and we need to learn about this field of administrative science so that we can handle all these challenges of the day. It's already there. We just need to go and get it. Translate some books, bring it to our universities, have students enroll. Right? We can do something. This opportunity that we have, this resource that we have. Now, he also said, we also have to be cognizant that when you're a king, one person can say, this needs to be done, and then it gets done. All right? This democracy, this democratic experiment of America, one person says, get it done, you have 1 million people lined up to ask you why. Why should it get done? All right? He specifically said that in democracy, there are 1 million rulers. All right? And public opinion is fickle. Prejudice, rules. He said this, prejudice rules. Maybe he didn't say prejudice rules, but he said there's a lot of prejudices, and people buy into it. Because it's easier to buy into prejudice. All right? Because you don't have to think. It's an easy way to understand the world. All right? And mass opinion is generally shaped like that. All right? What do he also say? He says, out of a lot of people, there are a few wise men and women. And this time he's saying men and women. All right? So he was saying the job of the administrator in a democracy is much more complex and difficult than it would be under a king. All right? And also, since it was a growing country, not one function of government that was simple is not now complex. Remember I put up the photos of New York City? Population is growing, right? Now you need public transportation, now you need bridges, so forth and so on. And the current system of governance, the boss politics, was not able to handle the challenges of the day. All right? The government was once complex. No, simple, now it's complex. And since it's complex, we need to study. Because if we don't, our problems are only going to magnify. All right? And we're not going to be able to take advantage of this resource that we have, which is a country. All right? Section 2, defining this abstract concept of administration. He tried to simplify the definition and said administration is finding the most economical and efficient methods for carrying out the public's business. The public has a lot of business. So whatever that business is, you need to find the most efficient, economical way. Now, for sophisticated students of public administration like yourself, who obtained a bachelor's degree, they have professional experience, you say, okay, well, you break down the task of whatever it is that we're doing, try to dig into it and find the most economical way. But, you know, at this point in time, was the bureaucracy that sophisticated? Was it composed of that sophisticated individuals? What did it take to get hired?
Training, skills, experience.
At this point, government jobs, training and skills.
They need to take
That's what the study was.
It was saying that you need that, but at this point in time, what did it take to get a government job?
Okay, take a test.
That just started. That's 1881, Milton Act.
He brought that in.
What did it take? His job in public service. Loyalty. Who'd you vote for? What neighborhood are you from? What race are you? Yes, loyalty. Who'd you vote for? All right. Now, if your livelihood is based upon who you vote for, then you focus on that. You focus really hard on the politics. All right? If the voting is based upon you increasing your numbers of loyal people, then that's what it's about. It's not about finding the most skilled people who can do the job. It's about finding the most skilled people who can get out there and get other people on board with what it is that you're doing. All right? Sometimes they're one and the same. Most of the time, they're not. It's just like every one of you have met somebody who can talk a good game. All right? When it comes to doing that hard work, they're gone. All right? When challenges become complex, the party boss system was stretched and it was faltering. All right? Yet, at the same time, you have all these big industries starting. The American Industrial Revolution. You have the railroads. All right? You have this banking and finance. You have all these different gadgets being developed. So on the one hand, you have all this technology coming to the United States, and you have these private industries who are efficient, yet you have these public agencies who are not efficient. They're not keeping up with the times. So the basic theory here, the easiest way to understand it, is to bring business principles into the public's business, into the public sector. All right? Because at one time, the public sector was just a political animal. Everything is about politics. What he's trying to do is say, look, we have these successful businesses going on that are icons of the world. Let's bring some of their principles of efficiency into the public sector. Yet there's a contradiction. A contradiction that's very, very difficult to deal with. One of the classes we talked about, American politics, that developed design of the Constitution, and these inherent contradictions within the American governance. All right? So on one hand, he's arguing for government to be as efficient as business. We're talking about staffing, continual improvements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. make things efficient. On the other hand, the thing that really makes government inefficient is the democratic process. There's due process for everything. All right. Now today, we have this government shutdown. All right. Last time the government shut down was when? Does anyone know?
17 years ago.
Yeah. What was that about?
The Clinton, almost the same thing as now.
Clinton balancing the budget. All right. Government shut down. Now 17 years later, what's this shutdown really about? Us.
Obamacare,
It's about the health care law, right?
About race.
yeah.
Economic resources.
It's about the health care law, right? Now,
I hope it don't last.
this health care law was approved by the president, approved by the Senate, Congress, the House, all right? Then after that, it went to the Supreme Court. And they said, okay, we don't want to step into this, all right? Well, they took the case, they got approved. Now it's going back under another way through the budgeting process to be held up. When is this thing going to be over? All right? When is it going to get implemented? How will it get implemented? All right? If this was a monarchy, if the president was all powerful,
It would have been done.
it would have been done. But in the American system of governance, power is decentralized. There are multiple points in the system to stop something from moving through. All right? So, is that efficient?
No.
Sometimes.
If 5 years ago, the president said, I want all Americans to be insured, can he just, boom, and get it done?
No.
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 All right? No. That is very inefficient. People could be dying. There could be large challenges that this nation faces, critical challenges, but power is decentralized because of the democratic process. That's what democracy is about. That makes our government inefficient. Very inefficient. It's the democratic process. How can you separate the two? Because if you separate the two, you can be very efficient, you can be much more efficient.
So how can you separate the two?
We'll have to have another.
That's where this concept of politics administrative dichotomy was developed. All right? Yeah.
Dr. Albert, you know, if change happens too fast, that's no good either. So you have these decentralization, right, and things take time because they need to take time. They need to be further developed, but not so much time that it's, inefficient. So I think those, the government still has to be tweaked, I guess, with time. I mean, it can't take like forever to like 5 or 6 years, but things can't happen like that. You have the process of it. It has to go through that process because if it happens too fast, then we don't know how to handle it.
Or it needs to be vetted out so it will be accepted by the people. But these same arguments, the same dilemma really that you brought up, has anyone heard of the Federalist Papers? After the Constitution, for the Bill of Rights, there was a debate going back and forth, Madison, specifically Madison, that there was an argument about should we have a more efficient government? Should things take so much time, should power be so diffused? Or should there be more centralization of power so things can get done, so government can function, take care of basic tasks that need to be taken care of? Again, this is a negotiation. just one of the inherent contradictions in our society. Now, when you sit back and say, okay, wow, this was 200 some years ago, they were arguing about these things. Maybe it is good that ideas are vetted, right? Everyone has a say, so if it gets approved, it'll be accepted throughout society, have more social stability, so forth and so on. This is the longest continuous constitution that exists within the world, the American one. But we've had challenges. We've had civil war. We've had plenty of riots. We've had a lot of social conflict, tension. Our politics is extremely contentious if you look back from the very beginning. We have challenges. We have issues. Right? But somewhere in those issues, we continue to move forward. Right? Good or bad.
Big check.
Big checks.
Little guns, no checks.
So Dr. Oliver, I have a question on that statement that you said. You said power is decentralized because of democratic process, right? If it was
Due process, yes.
I'm sorry?
Well, who power was in the Constitution was made decentralized because remember we were rebelling against king or monarchical system. So power was decentralized. But I said government, the system is made inefficient because of due process. Yeah. So and that basically means that before the government takes life, liberty,
That's the process.
there's a process, right? There's a process. That's where it's supposed to be the courts, so forth and so on. Life, liberty, yeah, and so forth, so on. But there's a due process. So all government action is bounded within some type of regulation that spells out the process, the due process.
So that, I was just going to say what Alice stated, that it takes time, it takes process. And that's a part of what's happening now. It went through a process. It went through other people before. It was just said, okay, let's go forward with this.
Since May of last year.
But it is going forward now. But
Yes, but this is the thing. It's a real example of the difficulties in the American system of governance. Once you think something is moving forward, things can change because the process has a lot of, how should I say,
has intervened.
there are a lot of, power is distributed, right? The reason why the government is shut down is because Congress doesn't want to pass the budget, right? They don't want to pass the budget because the healthcare law is in the budget, right? So they're using their power, their power to pass the budget to try to impact something else, a law that's in the budget, right? That's attached to the budget, all right?
So they have a lot of negotiating, right?
Nope.
Lot,
No, they can keep the government shut down. At some point, somebody has to budge.
and that's what they're doing. Who's going to merge, how they're going to compromise, if they're going to compromise, or when they're going to compromise. That's it.
This, right there, right.
So my understanding is, since the health care is in the budget, Congress is saying because health care is in the budget, they won't pay, they won't allow X amount to go through because they don't want to spend that amount of money.
No,
for
they,
healthcare.
simply stated, because the healthcare bill is in the budget, they do not want to pass the budget because they're using their power to keep the healthcare bill from going into effect.
Right, because the reason why I said that, because today when I was listening to the president, he said it has nothing to do with extra money, it's just whatever Congress decides, that's the amount they have to pay for, and they don't want to pay for it.
It's a budget. Either they say, yes, we approve this, or no, they do not want to finance the healthcare bill. So they're using the power.
And it's not there.
So, I mean, look, you can dig into the specifics, but in general, the specifics don't matter. It's the concept. It's an ideological battle. It's politics. It could be that specifics today, and it could be something else. Because we're at the Supreme Court before that, right? And there's a battle in the Senate. It's an ideological battle. And what I'm saying is that these ideological battles, our system is set up to where they play out in all kind of different ways. All right? It's a chess game. It's a strategy. So also, as administrators, don't get hung up. Comply with what the rules and regulations say, but understand them, know them, because once you understand those parameters, those boundaries, you can be much more effective. Don't get hung up on the little innuendos, right? The minute details, because it's meant to trip you up. It's meant to trip up the masses, because the masses can't really understand and think through that, right? But you're trying to be the boss, the chief executive. Right? You have to think through that. It's an art.
Question, but even with them going to the Supreme Court, which is separate in their own, judicial, but then all corporations, even the United States, it's run under executive branch of government. So where does the healthcare lie? You see what I'm saying?
The Supreme Court is the judicial branch of government.
But it's the separation of power from
Exactly.
executive.
That's why they went to the Supreme Court, because the president and the House
But if the
passed the bill.
But if the United States is a corporation, they're here to make money. Corporations act as an individual.
The United
So the United
States.
States, yeah.
The United States is not an individual. United
No,
States.
a corporation is an individual, and the United States can act as one in the larger form. So where's that different, if that's the reason why they don't want the healthcare? Is it falling under that jurisdiction
I
as
can't
a
answer that
corporation?
question. You don't want that question. What do you want?
Huh?
So that's right. I can't answer that question.
They don't want that word.
And that's not that, I don't want to take everybody's time.
No,
Let me keep it going right quick. Let me keep it going. Now, politics, administration, dichotomy. Get this down. Politics, administration, dichotomy. This is what keeps this together. Wilson said, look,
Did you say, sir? Oh,
can you see that? Back in the day, professors, they would take a podium, they would write something down, and they would sit there and just talk and lecture from it. All right? I thought I'd be more modern in a sense. I'll provide a guide behind me to guide the lecture. What you should do, take diligent notes. Any meeting that you have, take diligent notes. What you don't have, you try to fill it. Have to meet people in the classroom. What did he say? What did I miss? Right? And then you can go on Angel. Get that lecture. All right? All right. Politics, administration, dichotomy. And he says, or he argues, to build this theory, that you can separate politics from the day-to-day affairs of administration. Yes, that is the heart of Orthodox theory. Meaning that the politicians can duke it out. They can fight really, really hard, all right, about a law, who gets what, when, where, and how. But once that law is passed, it should be given to administrators, professionally trained administrators. The politicians should stay out of the way. And in exchange for that, the administrators will stay out of the way of politics, stay out. So there's a separation. And this separation, this idea, this concept, this theory, it lasted for 50 years. And at this point in time, it was necessary. And I'll throw this out there. If the New York courthouse, under Mr. Tweed, if that was run by a professional administrator, paid a salary, we would assume that they're honest, right? They're not on the tape, right? Do you think it would have cost this much to build? Would it have taken 20 years to build? contract, failed, boom, move on to something else, right? That is a good example of the difference between a politician managing the day-to-day affairs of government, or what can happen, and a professionally trained administrator. And we'll get to the attributes of a professionally trained administrator as we move along. All right? But we still haven't defined what that is. All right? But this contradiction is there. But it's needed at this point in time in this nation's history. All right? Now, third part of this essay is about how do we bring this study back to the United States. Because as I mentioned, in Europe, universities and schools of administrative science for at least 100-200 years prior to this essay, right? The administrative apparatus is very efficient. So he basically said, we need to go to Europe, we need to go through their libraries, compile this information, and bring it back, and train the next generation of leaders, administrative leaders. He also said, as a response back to people who would say, well, government in Europe is run by monarchs. It's not a democracy. And there's a kind of an underlying thread here, because when he's arguing for professional administration, he's also arguing to take power from politicians and to give it to these abstract, professionally trained administrators. Now, the thing is, in the system, the politicians have to approve this. So he's asking, or theorizing, that the people who need to approve these types of reforms have to give up some sort of power for the greater good of society. It's hard to do. Now, one of his responses is that we can borrow the knife sharpening technique from a murderer, but we do not have to adopt his felonious ways. Interesting, right? Sounds good. Now, on one hand, when you first go through this, it's a long, dry, abstract reading, right? But when you start digging deeper, he's talking about a lot of issues that are going on in society then, and a lot of this relates to society now. Right? I mean, here's something I'll throw out there. Are we dealing with any challenges today where it would do us some good to look around the world and see what others are doing to address the challenge? Okay.
Yes.
Like what? Healthcare. All right. What else? Education. Employment. Unemployment rate. Gun violence. Housing.
Legalizing marijuana.
Maternity leave. Now that's a very good one, you know. People get a lot of time off. They get paid for having babies, right? In America.
Paid for having babies? I don't think so.
They give you
Most European countries, the birth rates are very low. So they need more maternity leave. Yeah, they need more time off. Right?
You get 30 minutes to relax.
scientific management. All right. Frederick Taylor. Now, scientific management, whether you know it or not, impacts so many, this theory impacts so many aspects of your lives on a daily basis. And for us, generations that we've grown up in, it's always been around. It shapes, really, many parameters of our lives that we don't even know. But this is one of the most profound theories of the 20th century. All right? The basic building block of this theory is that each element of work can be broken down into a science. The fastest way of doing anything. All right? You can scientifically select individuals for a job, train them, and develop them to reach their fullest potential, which in this case is to be the fastest at whatever it is that they're supposed to be doing. Efficient. That stopwatch means time is money. So it's two in the same coin. He stressed a clear delineation of authority, strict hierarchy and chain of command, and a separation from those who plan work from those who actually carry out the work. So there's management and there's frontline employees, and they should not fraternize because the management cannot build any type of personal relationship with the employees because they may have to let them go, they may have to make them work more hours. They do not need to learn about that individual as a human being. For everything, there's an incentive scheme put into place. You specialize at a task, not at a profession. And there's always one best way. There are many ways to do things, but there's always one best way. That one best way is the most efficient. All right? Use a scientific method to figure out that way. All right? Now I know.
Body tonight is Century on Friday is about productivity. All sorts of businesses are finding all sorts of ways to make their workplace more efficient. And so tonight, what many people believe is the most important ism of the 20th century, as is Taylorism. It is sometimes argued that Taylorism has made the most lasting contribution to American thought since the Federalist Papers. Taylorism, you might ask? Chances are you live and work by it. Tonight, the extraordinary impact of Frederick Winslow Taylor. At the turn of the century, when the Industrial Revolution was described and was beginning to change everything, Frederick Winslow Taylor became convinced that one machine could turn America into an economic powerhouse, the stockwatch. Frederick Taylor was the first businessman. He came into the factories with the industrial northeast and changed them. Machines had already changed the mills of the 19th century, but the workers who ran them clung to the old ways of doing things. Frederick Taylor thought the system was ridiculously inefficient.
He was the first person to come along and say, we can treat work as a science just as we can anything else. We can analyze it, we can tear it apart, and we can reconstruct it in a new, more efficient way.
Taylor was born into Philadelphia's Quaker aristocracy. He was born rich. His father never worked a day in his life. Taylor was accepted by Harvard, but he did not go. Instead, he learned about factories, how to read mechanical drawings, how to be a machinist. He became a consultant for America's steel industry when he convinced the mill owners that he could speed up production. They worked, and Taylor watched. And he timed it. He timed everything. Every job is broken up into tasks, each task timed with an eye to efficiency. Taylor determined that coal shovels were most efficient lifting exactly 21.5 pounds. Then he designed a perfect, most efficient shovel and a schedule of how many lifts each worker should do every minute, every hour. When they should rest, productivity soared. The workers hated it.
We deprive workers of control over the workplace, over their tools, and over the use of their bodies.
Taylor couldn't understand the animosity. He thought surely that more productivity would lead to happier workers who were better paid. By 1911, when he published his Principles of Scientific Management, the enthusiasm for Taylor's ideas had grown. In its division of labor and insistence upon speed, Henry Ford's assembly line followed Taylor's principles. Before long, Taylorism was felt everywhere. How to type faster, how to perform surgery faster. By the 1930s, Taylor's ideas of efficiency were even making themselves felt in the family kitchen.
An efficiently planned kitchen frees the housewife from fatigue.
But organized labor was never happy with Taylor. Even Hollywood was wondering what it might all be. Taylor's one best way of doing things, organized efficiency, became central to the conduct of business in the 20th century. You can see it today on the assembly lines which produce our cars, our computers, our cheeseburgers, even our coffee.
Many laborers have appeared in the managerial field, but none of them has had the influence of Frederick W. Taylor.
That would have pleased Taylor. He never knew the full extent of his influence. He became ill and died in 1915 at the age of 59. It is said that the last thing he did before he died was wind his watch. Taylorism, unionism, consumerism, all on our website, thecentury.com. That's our report of World News tonight. Don't forget 2020 later and Nightline. I'm Peter Gaddings. Have a good weekend and good night.
All right. Interesting, huh? Now, the scientific management philosophy is profound because prior to Taylor going around talking about this, work was done as a craft, as a specialty. You build tables, cut down a tree, or you get the wood, you sand it down, you polish it, and it was your personal craft. All right? But Taylor did said, no, that's not the most efficient method. You need to have 4 people. One person just does legs, one person does the flat top, one person assembles. And he rapidly accelerated the amount that can be produced with the same amount or less resources for business in America. Now again, management loved this because now they're getting more for their resources. Loved it. Workers hated it. Why?
Because they became part of a machine.
Right. Part of a machine, right? Remember that quote, part of a machine, because that is the underlying, one of the underlying elements here. is that scientific management views the organization as a machine, a complex machine, and the people, the individuals, merely are parts of that bigger machine. They need to fit into that machine and work in that machine. Everyone needs to fit a particular mold. All right? If you do not fit that mold, you cannot fit into the machine. Because that mold, the goal is maximum efficiency.
You have the option to mix that up. You know, you can be the machine, and you can be the lathe, and you can work the lathe for a year, and then switch over to be the arm.
It depends. Remember, no, people were using stopwatch. There was a stopwatch. There was a study that were done for your test. What are you best at? What are you fastest at? And that was your job, life. And to do that one thing for life. You're rewarded with a decent salary, especially in those times. However, that was the thing that you did. Yes.
You guys use the same system in McDonald's and Burger King.
Exactly. You hit it. You make the connection. All right? McDonald's or Burger King. All right? That's the connection. We're going to go over the book McDonaldization. All right? That's the modern day scientific management. But it's not just a fast food restaurant. It's the majority of housing in the United States. Tract homes. All right? Large buildings. The mass-produced clothes, and shoes that we wear. The popular music, where you can be on one side of the country, you fly to the other side, and the same song is on. And it goes on and on and on, right? There's a benefit to it, because now more goods and services can be produced, or more produced, so more people can enjoy that middle class life, right? Who doesn't want a house, a car, clothes, nice things, all right? If you can produce more for cheaper, society is better off. Because everyone has to go to that specialist, it's going to take longer, it costs more. All right? And that's really one of the gifts that America is giving to the world during the 20th century, because for the most part, especially from the early 1900s, all the way up until the 1980s, no one could produce more, better. Nobody could produce more, better things faster and cheaper than we could. Planes, cars. I was in Europe and some guy said, before the GIs came, after World War II, started passing out the chocolate and cigarettes. It was okay for everyone to be poor. That was the way of life. Underlying that means a consumer culture that has developed in the United States. People watch our movies, our TV, everywhere around the world, and they see these things, and they start wanting them. It becomes a lifestyle. A lot of our society is caught up in it, which is a whole other class, a whole other study. There's studies about it. But the bigger thing here is the ability to produce a lot for less. Now a lot of our clothes, a lot of the stuff in our homes is made where? Made in China. All right? Taking this idea, they kind of, right, if you put it together, they did the same thing that Wilson was arguing about, right? take this idea, apply it to your society, your situation, try to address your own problem. All right? So now we got a lot of our people being laid off. We're competing against people who can do the same thing. We get paid $100 a month to make those cell phones that we all have in our pockets. It's computers. Third one, Max Weber. All right, so the winner Wilson, Taylor, it's Weber. It's the third building block of Orthodox. All right. Now, Max Weber is one of the founding social scientists, founders of the study of sociology. All right, most people's one of their favorite classes. All right, who doesn't like to learn about society? What's going on? Social phenomena. All right. Weber.
So you said Wilson, Taylor, and Weaver, they were all the Orthodox administrators?
Now, their theories are the building blocks of Orthodox administration. So, embedded within public administration writings, more specifically from 1902, Frank Vidnow, who produced the first textbook on public administration, it's called Public Administration, all the way up until the 1940s, 1945. These were the primary theories, and all the writings were based upon these theoretical constructs. Politics, administration, dichotomy, scientific management, because the only way to bring scientific management principles of efficiency into the public sector was to theoretically separate politics and administration. But that was done because of boss politics. Everything was politics before, right? The goal was to bring business principles into public agencies. But this Weber construct is called the ideal type. It was necessary because it provides an overarching framework on how public agencies should be organized. All right? Now, Max Weber is probably, to this day, still one of the foremost scholars of the concept of bureaucracy. The concept. Public agencies that existed throughout time, history, that organized really the daily functions of society. So we went back to the Egyptians, we went to ancient China, we went to ancient Rome, Ottoman Empire, modern European states. And he said, you know what? These are all different countries that have different things going on. But at some level, at some point, there are some similarities. But in those similarities, there's a progression in the type and efficiency of government. And he broke it down to these three variables, which are attached to sources of leadership. You'll see right now. So the first source of leadership is traditional. The Pharaoh is a prime example. They're born into a situation. They're born into the world, and they're king. So they have ultimate power because they were born into a situation. They didn't do anything special in and of themselves. Most of us, when we're in the womb or Before that, we don't say, I want that to be my parent. I want to be right there. When you're 1 year old, most people don't say, I want to be king. It's hard to talk, walk, let alone know what else you know what you're doing, your status in society. But traditional authority is based upon, really, you're born into the situation. And there is a justifications, really, it could be the religion, the custom, tradition, whatever society, all right? Second, you're born into the situation. It could be through your religion, culture, tradition, but there is some type of higher justification for an individual being placed into power. But for the most part, they were born there. Born into it. Second source of leadership. So over time, it wasn't just good enough to be born into a situation, even though most of the time it worked. He said at some point, people had to be charismatic. And he defined this as resting on a devotion to some type of sanctity, heroism, exemplary leadership, something special about that individual. They can get up in the room, they can speak to people, they did courageous things, they were a hero in some sense. So people, there was a justification for following them, not just because they were born into something, but there had to be something special. Charismatic leadership. And he also went on to say normative patterns or order was revealed or ordained. Yes. What did you say? Say again.
Would you give an example of that?
Charismatic, yeah. Charismatic. Ordained by him, meaning a higher being.
Yeah.
And I think he was, when he was talking about ordained, he went to the Middle Ages when a lot of the religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, came. And in the story, the person goes away, they get the message, and they go back, and they tell the people they're ordained. Prior to that, and there has to be something special about the individual. The individual had to do something special. It's not just because they're born into it, it was because there's something special about the individual, and the message was revealed to them. And then because the message, they were special, the message was revealed to them, then that is what their leadership authority is based upon. All right? It's not just they were born into it. He argues that before the Middle Ages, you just have to be born into it. Right? So there's this progression that goes on. But the highest and the most modern, well, let me not say the highest, the most modern source of leadership is rational legal authority. Now this is resting on the beliefs and the legality of patterns of normative rules and rights, which elevated those individuals to issues of to a position in command. Now let me deconstruct this a little bit. Especially in Western philosophy, law is supposed to be the reflection of societal norms, and then those societal norms have been codified, written into law. They agreed upon by some structure, the governing structure. All right? Now, once that law is written, it is the law of the land. Either the people have to follow the law, or there's repercussions. Rational legal is saying that the people in power, there is a law, some type of social norm that justifies their having power. And that law codifies the power that they have, the power that they can exercise in society. It's a jump. Because prior to this, it was charismatic leadership. There was no law saying this person's in power, there's no justification. The charismatic leader says, you are my chief. Boom, he's the chief. He steps up and says, okay, I'm the chief. All right. You're the top administrator. Okay, oh, good. I'm the top administrator. Okay? Now, this rational legal is saying for you to be police chief, you have to have these certain qualifications. You have to have this certain training. You can't have this kind of background. So that weeds out a lot of people. All right? And then, you have to have training. You have to compete with other people who have that same type of training. So that makes it even more difficult. And then when that person's police chief, there's laws saying that, well, you have this power to arrest people if they've done this, this, and this. And if you do that, there's a process that you have to go through. Prior to this, rational legal, the charismatic leader says, you know what, I don't like that guy. Why don't you go knock on his door at night and take care of him? And the police chief says, okay. They're going to do it, take care of him, right? But there's no law, no written codes that articulate the power, the specific power of the police chief. All right? So this is like, I look at the steps right here, but it's like walking up steps in the sophistication, right, of governance, or the relationship between those in power and the masses. All right? And I know this is still abstract.
I have a question.
Yes.
So how does the rationale legal concept differ? How did it get to the point where it can differ from state to state? So this is something that's United States, but then there are different regulations from state to state. How is that possible?
Within the United States?
Yeah.
Well, the United States is complete rational legal, meaning that from the very founding, there were laws that were written and agreed upon by some type of governing system. Okay? So that's a rational legal. There's a system, there's a structure, there's rules and regulations to abide by. All right? Before that, the United States was governed as 13 colonies under the British king. All right? Now the king is a charismatic, well, considered a charismatic leader. All right? In some ways, a traditional leader because they're born into that place. All right? They can make rules, laws, and win. So there's a gradation right here. And this isn't a specific science. These are trends. But I want you to get the grasp of the different types of leadership authorities. All right?
So
Because
basically, you could define
yes, they say that there's a progression of there's different types of leadership authorities. And as we move along, it will become more apparent and important. But right now, just get the general overview. Now, this ideal type bureaucracy, you'll hear about it. The ideal type never exists completely in real life. However, this is a theoretical construct. And by developing this theoretical construct, it will allow you to be able to vision what a map, the ideal type of a bureaucratic system would be. It is a construct that's put together so that you can get a better understanding and see what he was talking about. And this is very important for you to understand, because all of our bureaucratic organizations, our government in the United States, is developed based upon this ideal type. It's always trying to reach this ideal type. It will never fully, but it's always striving. And as I go through, you will see. The first one, jurisdictional areas are clearly defined. There's got to be borders for that government. There's got to be some type of defined border. Physical border and a border, a boundary of power. Either you can do this or you cannot do this. All right? The organization follows the hierarchical principle, meaning that there's one person at the top. The power flows down. Chain of command, a rigid, straight chain of command, so there is no question at any given point in time who is in charge. There's no question about who is in charge. There are rules and regulations that demarcate who's in charge of when, where, and how. It always goes back up to one person. All right? Someone has to be responsible. Intentional, abstract rules govern all actions of the administrators and the administrative organization. Meaning that for everything that's done, there is a process. There is a law that says, if you fit this classification, the administrator can do this. If you did not do this or do not fit this classification, then the administrator can't do anything. You can basically tell them to go to hell. Now think about it, right? What's the modern day example? If you did this, the administrator has the power to do this to you. If you did not do this, then the administrator does not have the power to exercise their power over you. It's a modern example. It's simple.
Yeah.
If you're insubordinate, the administrator has to fire you, something like that?
Crime, right? You stopped by the police, right? Now there are ways of muddling, all right, what the law says. If there's no, they don't have a probable cause, stop and frisk you, then legally they're not supposed to do it. But if you make a fortuitous movement, does anyone know what a fortuitous movement is? Anything. Fortuitous movement is anything, all right?
They're gonna shoot you.
Alright? Fortuitous movement. That's over 50% of the stop and frisk. After they stop somebody and fill out a car, justify why they did it. Fortuitous movement can really mean anything. Alright? Jerk funny, you had a funny walk, or you look suspicious. It comes from you look suspicious. Alright?
You're talking to us.
But the main thing is,
He's, hour descent, I swear, I'm a little bit of Larchmont, even on a little bicycle. And I look at the flashlight in my face, it's kind of like, blink if you're okay.
pull over, right?
Yeah, pulled over for just, you didn't stop, you yielded. Tonight you learned the difference between yield and stop.
Right. Justification, right?
Or complete stop.
dealing with a public agency, everything is a case. Everything. The ability of an administrator to exercise the power over anyone or anything is broken down to a case. And there are certain criteria, certain checks that the administrator has to go through to see if either you meet the requirements for them to exercise the power, and then if you do, then there are different phases,
Yeah.
degrees that they have to go through. All right? But in that, there are abstract rules and regulations that every administrator must follow. All right? To some degree or another. And then there's some type of oversight. Now here's also the next thing. The means of production. The office belongs to the public agency, not the administrator. All right? Means of production. When you walk into that office, put on that uniform, it belongs to the organization, not the individual. Now, just for a side note, knowing that, be careful what you when you send those emails and what you say, because if you don't want to sit up in court and try to explain it, then just, go speak to the person in person and do something like that, because it happens quite often. You're an administrator, you have to go there, sit in court, somebody's mad at the organization that you work for, you don't have anything to do with it. All right? And then somewhere in public, you call this person this or that, the other. Just have a conversation. I said it as a side note, and you'll be surprised. But the main thing here is an office does not belong to the person. They are merely placeholders. Right? Now this becomes important. Because some people, in their minds, they think that that office, that department, that organization belongs to them.
Big time.
Right?
Social service is good.
Yes.
Social service too is a good example.
I have stories. This is another one. Officials are selected on the basis of technical qualifications. Not who they know, what their political affiliation, not their race, religion, neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's based on technical qualifications. So there has to be some weeding out process, standardized weeding out process. All right, to find the best candidates for whatever particular job it is. All right. And employment in the organization is a career. It's not temporary. It's a lifetime appointment with a stable salary and a pension. What is the purpose of this? Security. What is security? Why is security important? I hear people whispering and I'm just trying to get an answer. What's an answer?
Stability, loyalty, workers.
Stability, loyalty, yeah, and to keep people to put their hand in the cookie jar, right? To mitigate corruption. Because when you're dealing with the public's business, all right, if there's lifetime employment, on the one hand, that provides an incentive for the administrator not to try to enrich themselves on the job. Because now they know that if they do what they're supposed to be doing, they'll be taken care of for life. So they can focus on being good at whatever it is that they're doing, that they do. And that becomes really important for jobs of a very sensitive and serious nature. You don't want someone going out to crime scenes and dealing with murders. On one hand, and worried about being foreclosed on that same day. And it sounds funny, right? But it's the stress that it provides. They can't focus on their job. And then it's also about the personal, separating the office from the personal, right? If the personal can be taken care of, middle class life, right? Then they can go to the job and focus. They can keep it separate. Two don't come. If someone's always penny pinching, two tend to come together. All right? And he didn't. He wasn't just studying modern administrative apparatus. He was going back hundreds of years. All right? So these issues kept coming up. And he said, "This is how you deal with it." So in some way or another, you work in a public agency, look at a public agency, there are rules and regulations that relate to and derive, and that are derived from this ideal type. And there are always, organizations are always striving to obtain this ideal type. But it's very difficult to obtain it. Now, the ideal type is the ultimate form of whatever type of rationalization in social life. Because when he was studying this rationalization, he wasn't just saying that this should be for public agencies. He was also saying that this is for private organizations. If they organize themselves this way, this will maximize efficiency. This is the most efficient way to organize yourself. And this allows room for the scientific management. So this is a way to bring it together, bring an organization together. It's one thing if you have 10 people, you can work things out. But if organizations are getting large, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, spread over such a large continent as America, then you need some type of complex way to organize all the things that are going on, to make the transactions between individuals efficient, so they don't, to minimize the amount of time, resources that they're taking away from the organization. Weber argued, he came up with this metaphor of the iron cage. The iron cage means that man, in this most heightened bureaucratic society, will trap themselves in their own rules and regulations. Because for every rule that's made to increase the efficiency in society, that's less and less freedom every individual in society will have. In order to maximize efficiency and the development, really, of our society, we all have to give up a little something. Sacrifice your individuality, your freedom. All right? And this is because the bureaucracy is insulated from citizens. It's not directly accountable to the political process, but you do not directly elect the bureaucrats. It's a lifetime appointment, 20 to 30 years, and know what job it is, right? The bureaucracy together has more resources than any individual or groups in society, small groups in society. And even if one bureaucrat wanted to change the system, they do not have the power, because every job is specialized. So the power rests within very top has most control over the bureaucracy. But because of this concept of lifetime employment, people at the bottom of the chain don't always necessarily have to comply with what the people at the top want. And then he talked about this concept of social action, which is each of you as an individual. How many of you have volunteered within the past year doing anything? Raise your hands up high so we can all see. Look at this, right? That's good. That's good. Volunteer for something that you believe in, that you thought, okay, I want to contribute to this, right? That's considered a social action because something in you wanted you you saw something inside and you want to contribute whatever you had to it. It's a social action. That's really the basis of a society. But what he was saying, another way to look at it, is that in the most modern society, most transactions are classified as rationally organized actions. Rationally organized actions, basis is that every transaction that you are making, whether it's to buy food, buy a house, go to school, get back and forth where you need to go, is part of a systematic process based upon the principles of scientific management. All right? Which is different from the individual saying, I want to do this for the greater good of the society. You're getting a paycheck. All right? Now, he found two things. With this iron cage, the benefits of the iron cage, or bureaucracy, is that there's a hierarchy of authority, so people know who's in charge. It's impersonal. So everyone's treated the same. Written rules of conduct. So everyone knows what's going on, or at least they can look up. There's mutual understanding. Promotion is based upon achievement. Labor is specialized and sufficient. On the other hand, the negative aspects is that bureaucracy concentrates a lot of power in the small hands, in the hands of a few individuals in society. Those who control bureaucracy have a lot of control over individuals' lives in society. Within those bureaucracies, a few individuals really have the most power. Again, it's a concentration of power. And then for every new law that's passed, it's less and less freedom for the masses, for the people who have to live in society. That's the exchange. All right? Let me just show you. I thought some students did this a while ago, not here, but somewhere. But this is a good modern example. Way to try to understand the modern, what I'm talking about related to.
There are 7 billion people randomly scattered around the world. Each and every one of them has to consciously make hundreds of decisions on a daily basis. Decisions based on knowledge and understanding. Rational action and calculation are mastering our reality with an impressive rush. Rationalization is understood as using mathematical and logical reasoning. Standardization and simplification of processes, overthrowing inefficient practices as a whole. It assumes that everything can be known and understood, hence controlled. Recognized as the driver of evolution, rationalization is in the foundation of our modern life. Do we, however, understand it? And how did we get here? By finding the best possible means to a given end, getting from one point to another with minimal effort and achieving maximum result, or just by simply finding the one best way. Constantly, we are becoming self-involved in searching process of efficiency, a search that never stops, and even bureaucracy as the optimal form is being rationalized. Before we used to put files and documents into folders, now we store them on a memory stick, transferring them to a hard drive. Everything is efficient, with minimal effort needed. Thus, an emphasis is put on quantity and calculability, even quality in the background. By switching to digital photography, MP4 and emails, the natural world has been exchanged for megabytes. Greater RAM, processors, bigger hard drives allow users to achieve maximum speed and storage in our silicon era. Computers process terabytes of information and reduce the business storage costs by keeping data in the system memory, ensuring rapidity and efficiency. The use of credit and debit cards has been made possible due to technological progress. We rationalize by knowing the exact measure, precision of details, and calculating probabilities. Therefore, we eliminate surprises by calculating probability and achieving standardization and identity. Wearing a uniform and providing the exact same service every time. We're usually in a system of emotional labor, behaving in a such required way. We try to eliminate differences and make the world predictable. A simple movement is then expected to generate the same result it did last time, reducing the effect of the variables and making them predictable even in a system as changeable as the internet or the stock market. To ensure this predictability, we apply written rules and